Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that anytime we upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thank you.
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome once again to the D.C.B channel. My name is Zurishaddai. I'm one of the teachers of Congregation Beit Da'at CHOKMAH BINAH, located in Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11231. We thank the Most High God for our lives, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Thankful to the Creator of heaven and earth for life, for being here in the land of the living, and thanking the Most High God for all things and everything. giving glory to his high and holy name because he is to be praised at all times. Thanking the Creator also for the life of the leader of our congregation, even Chief Prince Yediel Ben Yissaskar, praying that the Most High God be with him and his family and bless him, and thanking the Most High, the Creator of heaven and earth, for all Yisrael scattered in the four corners of the earth. Also, we will be going through the Haftarah for Wayetzei, and that will be done by none other than Nasik Zurishaddai ben Yehudah, one of my teachers, also a mentor, thanking the Most High God for his life. And at this moment, I will turn it over to you, Nasik. How are you?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to say give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. The respective platform I'm on, the D.C.B platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Ariel, also to the host, Chief Uzael, to the princes, chiefs, brothers and sisters, Maureen, Connie, the rabbinate, greeting and tell my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem. I also like to say, Adonai Septai Ditakupi Agi Tia Theaka, O Lord, open down my lips, and my mouth should declare that praise. And I'll begin dealing with this particular Sidra, Wayetzei, the Haftarah for Wayetzei. Now, before I go into the Haftarah, the Torah itself, I'd like to just let people know that you have two customs, traditions that's followed. The Ashkenazi customs for the Haftarah Wayetzei is basically from Hosea, the 12th chapter, 13th verse, going to the 14th and 10th verse. Whereas when the Sephardims go from the 11th chapter, the 7th verse, going to the 12th chapter and 12th verse. And some Sephardims will go even as far as to the 13th verse, 13th chapter, 6th verse. But before I get into that, and we notice that mostly the Haftarah will bring a little relationship compared to the actual Sidra that comes out during the week. And that in itself has its own particular unique message in the Haftarah. But I like to go over as normally and highlight some points of the Sidra that's that I may not spoken on, which I'm sure some things I haven't spoken on when I actually did the Sidra Wayetzei a while back. And the Sidra itself for Wayetzei starts at Genesis, the 28th chapter, the 10th verse. And it goes to actually the 32nd chapter, the third verse, that being conclusive of Wayetzei. Make sure that I didn't give misinformation right away. Yeah. Wayetzei around the third verse, let me see. Yeah, 32nd chapter to the third verse. But one of the interesting things is that when we find, and then Wayetzei means and he went out. So, and I'll read just a couple of verses and bring out a couple of points. And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went towards Haran, and he lighted upon a place and tarried there all night because the sun was set. And he took one of the stones of the place and put it on his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to the heaven, and the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood beside him and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land wherein thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. And in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And behold, I am with thee, and I will keep thee whatsoever thou goest, and I will bring thee back unto this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken of thee. And Jacob awoke out of his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. And he was afraid and said, how full of awe is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gates of heaven. And Jacob arose up in the morning and took the stone that he had put on his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on top of it. And he called the name of the place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at the first. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone which I set up for a pillar shall be God's house, and all that thou give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. Now, there's a couple of things I want to bring out. This is the reason why I read that whole portion up to the end. One, we're told that he was going to Haran. We didn't need to know where he's actually leaving. So there's always a commentary about, in a reference to about when a person make an impact on a place or has an impact on a place, when they leave, their presence alone diminished the importance of the place. And, some of us, are fortunate if we be in certain areas or certain businesses or certain communities. And when we leave, your vacancy is felt by the community. And that meant that you was a very strong contributor to the very fabric of the community. But we know that Yaakov himself had to leave because under the ruse of getting a wife, but also because of the drama that he created for himself with his brother. But what I find interesting is that he's the first patriarch that we read about that had a dream. Abraham, we don't read about having a dream. We don't read about Yitzchak having a dream. Now, we know when Abraham had an epiphany and stuff of that nature, but for us, the term dream, the first time we read about the term of a dream, we read about it with Abimelech, when the Creator came to him in a dream. And so now here we have the first patriarch, which is the last of the three patriarchs that has a dream. And he's leaving, and he lays down on the ground with a pillow for his stone for his pillow. But what is unique is that it talks about a ladder. Now, in ancient times, and for us to understand certain things before, and I'm not going to be too long in this particular portion, but for us to understand the significance of it is that this is the only dream in scriptures that doesn't have a definitive interpretation. We could grasp different interpretations and give meaning that might be acceptable. But the actual meaning of the ladder itself and the angels ascending and descending, which is really strange because it seems like they should be descending, because we always figure the heavens is God's throne and earth is his footstool. So it seems like they should be descending and then ascending. And then also, how wide is the ladder for them to be coming and up, going up and down at the same time? So those are some things to think about, that the uniqueness of the dream is that in order for me to go up and another person to come down on the same ladder, it had to be very, 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 very wide. So, or are we going through each other? Going up and going by, some kind of way morphing through each other. And then one of the other things to consider is that it's referred to as Jacob ladder, and the word they use for ladder in a sense is sulam. And sulam, has a gematria, a numerical value. It's the same as Sinai, which is 130. It's a lot of things can be drawn from the 130. One thing I just would throw out is that, Yaakov actually ascended to his greatest level at 130, with no more setbacks in his life when he went down to Egypt just to see his son Joseph. And he spent those 17 years there. But besides that, just throwing these things out as we talk about. But in ancient times, some of the culture of the place, and I just want to bring this out briefly, is that people had a tradition of going to a spot that's marked as a shrine for some kind of deity, some being, whatever God they worship. And they will lay down at those particular spots where the shrine is. And then hopefully, while they go to sleep in that particular spot, that they get a revelation from whatever deity, some kind of omen, some kind of insight from whatever thing they're worshiping. That was an ancient tradition amongst a lot of the ancient people. And the thing that is remarkable is that Jacob wakes up, and it says God was either, and sometimes they might say beside him or upon him. And you always want to say, well, which one you wanted? Which way would you have God, beside you or upon you? So those are some of the things to think about as you go through. And then what is the purpose of those angels, ascending and descending? And usually an angel has a job. And an angel, the word angel itself means messenger, but sometimes you don't hear the message that the angels, might be presenting. And then, but we hear what the Creator communicate to Yaakov and identify himself. So this is his first encounter with the God, the God, the Creator of heaven and earth. And they identified that this is the same God that Abraham talked about, same God that Yitzchak dealt with, who's happened to be alive. And it's rare that the Creator referred to himself as the God of such an individual that's alive. And Isaac is still alive at this time. Also, some things we got to think about in this here is that Jacob himself is at the point, he's not a young man. He's in his 70s, going for a wife. Then when we read further and look further into this particular thing, is that he said God is in this place and he knew it not. Is it a certain location that God is confined to? That's something we should question. God is limited to a certain locale. He got a borderline that he can't cross. He got a limit that he can't go into. So just to think about those things to discuss further, why would we worry to say God is in this place and I knew it not? Then what is your concept of God? That's what you got to ask. And then he was worried about, because I went to sleep in this spot without acknowledging. Now, and in ancient times, and I mentioned about the tradition of other people in ancient times, they knew the spot was meant for their deity. Whereas Yaakov laid down and wind up realizing that his deity met him at a spot, Hamakom, the place. And what is unique, he called it, the house of God and a gateway to heaven, Sha'ar Shemayim. Sha'ar HaShemayim, maybe more exactly, more exact. All right, so when we look at this is where he looked at it and viewed it, and that if it's going to be a house, that it would be built at that particular spot. Now I know it's a lot of traditions saying similar spots where Abraham posted begin to offer by Isaac, the temple was actually built on that spot. It's nice, but we can't prove everything. It's a nice tradition, a nice thought, a nice allegory, if you would. And then one of the things is that he makes a vow, a bargaining vow. And usually a vow is usually saying what you're not going to do or what you're going to do. And then he asked for some of the most simple things, food to eat, clothes to wear, and to be brought back, to his father's house in peace. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that particular story. I'm just leaving it out. I know a lot of people are going to discuss it more in the future, but and I know most people read about it and heard it yesterday in various congregations. But these are things that you could explore more. Being this dream is the only dream in scriptures that doesn't have interpretation that's given in the Tanakh. All the interpretations is forged outside of the actual scripture. Also, one of the things I like to present here is that the Creator said, I want to be with you. So now, do Yaakov believe in the Creator? That he got to say, I need food to eat, clothes to wear, and bring me back to my father's house in peace, and then you'll be my God? When he already said that I would be with you? And then what's the purpose of the angels coming down? And the other ones leaving? We know God don't have a boundary. So there's a lot of stuff, that's why I say there's a lot of interpretations going on with that particular portion. But the final thing I want people to discuss and consider is when he promised to give a tenth of all that the Creator gives him, who he gave it to. We don't read nowhere in scripture where he ever gave up the tenth. We don't read it. Now we might say, hey, maybe he might have gave something to Melchizedek. We don't read that. So that's something else to consider. Abraham gave a tenth of all he had to Melchizedek. But who did Yaakov gave a tenth to? And where and when? We don't read that at all. So those are some of the things that's cloudy, so to speak, when we try to, look into this here episode of the dream. And then I'm just going to go just a little bit more. And when he went to got over there to Haran, which is not a short journey, and meets Raquel. All right, and we know he exhibited his strength at the well and everything of that nature. But what is uniquely strange is that when he meet Raquel, and then he bought, those that know the story, then he go ask his father after he stayed 30 days in the house, because a lot of times people could have a mannerism outside and they have a different mannerism at home. So you will see the person outside in the street. So they say their first impression is your first impression is your best impression. So they might have a certain decorum. Even kids, if they have a parent that's on them, they act a certain way in the street, and then you see the real person inside the house. So how you living? So Laban strikes a deal with him, and says, so you work for me for nothing? What will be your wages? And Jacob said, I will work 7 years for your daughter, for your daughter Raquel. Now, why work 7 years for any woman? And that's a lot to work 7 years for any woman. And I mean, not only then, any time, wait and work 7 years for it. But he could have just, why would he leave with nothing but his staff in his hand? What happened to his entourage of stuff, like that was sent for his mother, Rivka? So there's a lot of missing pieces in the saga. But he was supposed to get a wife, and they said, well, instead of asking, what would it cost me to marry your daughter? And how, perhaps send back and say, well, I get this from my father, or get this from some within a short span of time. But he said, I will serve 7 years for your daughter, which is a very, very considerable time for anyone. But you could say, well, why did he say 7 years? Could it be he trying to wait for things to cool off back home? Those are things you could question. And then we find out later on, what some brothers bring out about knowing the customs of a place or tradition of the place, that we find that after the time is up, that he winds up dealing with, getting the elder daughter instead of the younger daughter. Now describe Raquel's being beautiful, and describe Leah as just having soft eyes. What is the meaning of soft eyes? Those are things to consider. And then, how do you be with someone all night long and only recognize that it's not the one you want when the morning come up? That is something to consider. They had to look somewhat alike. If they had to look very. If the sisters don't look nothing alike, you would know it right away, from their shade, from the sound of their mouth, their voice, whatever the case is. You would you would be able to tell right away. With a veil on, it doesn't matter. But they had to look pretty much identical. That's another reason why some people say they was twins. Yaakov was a twin, but he wasn't an identical twin. Some traditions say that Leah and Raquel was twins, just that Raquel, whatever it was more of a looker, more outwardly, a better look. They say if a woman, had bad eyes, then you got to look harder to see what's the virtue in them. But if they got beautiful eyes, then most guys is mesmerized and don't look any further. But one of the things that's brought out too, that can consider, that when he woke up in the morning and realized it was Leah, and then and God seen that she was hated. These are some things I want to bring out as we pass by. God seen that she was hated. How is it that God opened up her womb? That means she would have been normally barren as well as her sister. But God seen that she was hated, opened up her womb in the scriptures, and she had a son, Reuben. The two women are uniquely different, but one of the things I like to bring up, and this is something to consider for couples, period, whether it's male or female. Jacob went into the marriage chamber thinking about Raquel, and went through what he do in the marriage chamber thinking about Raquel. The lesson to be learned is that if you got a significant other, if you got a wife or you got a husband, when you go into the chambers, you should be focused on that person you're with, not focus on somebody else. Jacob, in his first encounter with Mother Leah, was only focusing and thinking in his mind about another woman. And that is never a good sign. And there's always repercussions behind that. Now let's look at the two differences of the women. I think I brought that out before when I talked about it, that Leah had 4 children right off the bat, but everything was about her husband for the first 3. It's the 4th one that she decided, said, okay, it seemed like I can't make my husband love me. So now I'm just going to praise the Creator for this 4th son, Yehudah. While Raquel was more focused on being a mother, Leah was more focused on being a wife. All right, so those are some of the things that they bring out, in those areas. And then also on the way back, it's only when Creator, see things go bad, and when you got to realize that things are bad for yourself. You stayed 20 years. You had another dream about, dealing with the cattle, but you're supposed to wait there for a wife and then come on back. But he wanted this particular wife, and then he did 6 more years for cattle. And then on your way back, now you got issues. You're fleeing away from your father-in-law, but you meet your wives and convince them, and not so much the concubines, but the wives themselves. You have, at this point in time, you got 12 children, 11 sons and 1 daughter. And then you still away from your father. And, the Creator intervened. But one thing I like to bring out before I go into the Haftarah, and like I said, I'm just glossing over some deep, certain events in the Sidra, is that when we discovered that Laban had this dream and he was told not to speak good or bad to Jacob, and Laban knew that was actually the God of Jacob and not his God, and yet he going chasing and looking for his gods and his kid and the people. Jacob and Laban made an agreement, and the agreement was, at the oath that they made, and each one swore by their particular deity that they worship, that they will not cross over to do one another harm. Not that Jacob couldn't go back over to, Haram, or Laban could not cross over into the land of Israel, the land of Canaan at the time they would call it. It's just that if I cross over, I'm crossing over to do business or maybe to do some good. If you cross over, you come over to do business or do some good. But I'm not, but neither one of us gonna cross over to the other side to cause the next person any harm. That was their agreement. So those are some of the things that I like to leave for people to discuss more, in the future. But as I go straight to the Haftarah portion in the book of Hosea, but before, and just talk a little bit about this particular prophet Hosea, which I'm going to do the Sephardic one, pretty much the 11, picking up from the 11th chapter of Hosea, the 7th verse. But before I go into that, I just want to bring out this point. That Hosea was one of the prophets that was told to marry a harlot. Now, a lot of people run with this here story and think of this an actual, real, literal street, a street harlot. A woman that's really, really profane and stuff of that nature, and it had a bunch of men. And because of the term itself, but the term for the harlot is zona. It also means one that goes astray. And the concept is that we, and have children of whoredom. So that means that it's the type of lifestyle they actually living. Because I've been hearing it so much from brothers I grew up with, that he was told to marry, a harlot, and like that, a real street walker. And what it is in the scripture now, you can take it literal if you want to, all well and good. If you want to take it, I choose not to take it in that vein. I take it as a one that worshiping strange gods and went astray. When we were looking at the book about the ZCs in the book of Numbers, it used the same term, zona, which comes from for go astray, hoarding after other deities. So for those that think of a harlot only as, or whoredom is only one that's a streetwalker out there doing a whole lot of promiscuous physical acts, fornication, is also in the eyes of scripture, taken from the book of Numbers, 15, I think 39th chapter, 15th chapter, 39th verse, that that the word zona is used in reference to anybody that started to worship other deities. And so that's what more function in that area. And so is the names that's being given to them as to reflect on the children of the people of Israel. All right, so we're going to start off from 11:7. Yes.
We're in the book of Hosea, chapter 11, verse 7. Hallelujah. And my people are in suspense about returning to me. And though they call them upwards, none at all will lift himself up. How shall I give thee up, Ephraim? How shall I surrender thee, Yisrael? How shall I make thee as Admah? How shall I set thee as Zeboim? My heart is turned within me. My compassions are kindled together.
Hold on right there. Now, this is the Creator, before we go there. All right. Now, the Creator still calling his people, but we're in suspense about returning to the Creator. I don't know how to turn back. You do so wrong, don't know how to do right. We started saying, do wrong so long, you don't know how to do right. And also, they felt that they got caught up in a whole lot of idolatry worship and a whole lot of other stuff that's going on, but more so ritualistic stuff and worshiping at this particular time that's being spoken on by the prophet, which is bringing the message from the Creator. Now, what we find here is that the Creator's saying, letting you know right then and there that even though, his compassions are kindled together, within him, though the Creator have wrath and upset, is that he's not going to act according to his wrath for his people Israel. So when people look at and say, well, you don't have the temple, you don't have this, how you atone for sin, the Creator didn't say he's gonna let us go all together, without some stripes. But the thing is that you can still turn. If you got life, you got hope. And that's one of the things that the Creator bringing to the northern kingdom. Now, Ephraim itself was the northern kingdom that is talking about. Hosea talked more about the northern kingdom than do about the southern kingdom, at that particular time. During Hosea's final days as a prophet that we read about time-wise, it was during the time of King Hezekiah when he did a lot of reformation in the land of Yehudah, and Israel was messing up. All right, so we're going to pick it up from the 9th verse.
Verse 9, it reads, I will not execute the fierceness of mine anger. I will not return to destroy Ephraim. For I am God and not man, the Holy One in the midst of thee, and I will not come in fury.
Hold right there. Stop right there before we go there. Before we go there. Now, why would it be a statement from the prophet about saying God is not a man? Bill recognized that. And everybody recognized that there's a God is that they consider, even if they consider idol God, supposed to be something other than themselves. So what is this? That the Creator is saying that if you anger another man, do I bring him gifts, or is my apology good enough? You don't know how to come back and say, well, resolve this issue between another man necessarily. You bring him gifts, that might not do it. You apologize, that might not do it. But with the Creator, he's saying, I'm not like a man. So now what the Creator gonna say here? Pick it up from there.
Verse 10, it reads, they shall walk after Yehovah, who shall roar like a lion. For he shall roar, and the children shall come trembling from the west. They shall come trembling as a bird out of Egypt, and as a dove out of the land of Assyria, and I will make them to dwell in their houses, saith Yehovah.
Hold right there. Now, the Creator said, yeah, I'm going to shout at you. My tone going to be rough. But don't worry about it. You're going to survive it. That's the difference in this era. That though I may talk hard, come on you real hard, I'm not going to kill you. Parents sometimes raise the voice on the children. And we as parents sometimes raise our voice and say, man, you do it. Blase, 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 blase. But whatever they did, most times say, I ought to kill you. All right, take you out the world. But you say, go ahead, eat your food and go in the room. You know? So now you're riled up, you're hot, you're in the heat of the moment, in your fury. But yet you say, as soon as you eat, go to bed. That's a human compassion. How much more for that for the Creator? I mean, you do that with your own. And that's what the Creator is bringing out here. We're going to pick it up from the 12. All right.
We're in chapter 12, starting from verse. Give me 1 second here, Prince. To change something up. 1 second. All right. We're in chapter 12, starting from verse 1. Hallelujah. Ephraim compasseth me about with lies, and the house of Yisrael with deceit. And Judah is...
All right, over there. All right. Now, that word deceit, you know what I mean, it's used several times, and it's going to be used also with, when we get to the, I just want to bring out a couple of verses in the second portion of the Ashkenazi viewpoint, all right, where they use the word deceit more so. But go ahead, continue.
The middle of verse 1. And Judah is yet wayward towards God and towards the Holy One who is faithful. Verse 2. Ephraim striveth after wind and followeth after the east wind. All the day he multiplieth lies and desolation, and they make a covenant with Assyria, and oil is carried into Egypt. Jehovah have also a controversy with Judah, and will punish Jacob according to his ways, according to his doings will he recompense him.
All right, before we go any further, all right, Judah has some issues, but it ain't as bad as the northern kingdom, which is Ephraim, under Ephraim. What happens is that it says strive after the wind, the east wind, all right, that's the wind that's actually parted the Yam Suf for the Israelites across the Sea of Reeds. All the days he multiplied the lies and desolation. In other words, what lies did he multiply? The doctrine that's being taught, and how they're accomplishing a lot of stuff. But it goes on even further and say they make a covenant with Assyria, and oil is carried into Egypt. What's the oil? Why would you be carrying oil into Egypt? If you already, similar before that, it's about the worship. It's about worship and service that it's talking about here. How you worshiping. But let's read a little bit further. And it goes on to say.
Verse 4. In the womb he took his brother by the heel, and by his strength he strove with a godlike being. So he strove with an angel and prevailed. He wept and made supplication unto him. At Bethel he will find him, and there he will speak with us. But the whole...
All right, wait, before... That means right in there. All right. It said, all right, the Lord had a controversy with Yehudah and will punish Yaakov according to his ways. According to his doings will he recompense him. All right. Now, what is the doings? As we get into the later chapters, we're going to find out that he tried to use deception even in the room when we get into the next chapter, but during the Ashkenazi portion of Hosea. So that means, and like I mentioned before, when he was born, say, well, what are they struggling about? What is the issue? When you're fighting in a room, it got to be an issue, got to be something at stake. And yet, the Creator letting us know that a parent, our ancestor Jacob, we call Midah Keneg Midah, measure against measure, measure for measure. So and then we know right then and there that sometimes our roots, where we come from, some of the attitude of our parents, we will be perpetuating certain actions, and you have to pay for your actions. No one go free. So if it's cause and effect, then when you do certain things, you got to expect certain things to come back to you. So that's why it's making a relationship here. But so it says, not only did he strove with the godlike being, so he strove with an angel and prevailed. He wept and made supplications to him. All right. At Bethel we'll find him, and there we'll speak with us. All right. Now, who we gonna find? The Creator said gonna come back to mark. Yaakov in the Torah, the Sidra, marked the spot to come back to worship the Creator. We know he was a little delayed and a little slow getting back to that spot, as you're gonna find out later on. But he went to the spot to actually erect and worship the Creator and build the altar there. All right, but let's read a little bit further.
We're in verse 9? Yeah, verse 9. Slick out. No, verse 6. No, I think it's verse 6. Verse 6. But Yehovah, the God of hosts, Yehovah is his name. Therefore turn thou to thy God, keep mercy and justice, and wait for thy God continually. As for the trafficker, the balances of the deceit are in his hand. He loveth to oppress. And Ephraim said, surely I am become rich. I have found me wealth. In all my labors they shall find in me, Slicker. In all my labors they shall find in me no iniquity that were sin. But I am Yehovah thy God from the land of Egypt, and I will yet again make thee to dwell in tents, as in the days of the appointed season. I've also
right there. Right then and there. All right. This is pretty much where they get. I want to make sure I go too far and make the distinction, because we got one more verse where Sephardim would deal with. Sephardim would deal with normally. All right, but talking about the appointed times and seasons. In other words, we're going to be able to do that in the beginning. They say, I'm the Lord from the land of Egypt. All right. In other words, the same God that brought us out, the same God that rescued us, the same God that brought us up and kept us in the wilderness. He said, he's the same God. And then you're going to dwell in tents again. In other words, when we get to talk about tents, we talk about one of the most joyous times of our Shalosh Regalim, which is the 3 pointed times that males appear, which is the Sukkot time, dwelling in booths. So, and that supposed to be your most joyous time. But why that joyous time more so than any other? Because you just passed through Yom Kippur. You passed through a rededication. You went through a rededication, rededicating yourself to the Creator. But let's read a little bit further. Pick up from the 12th.
Well, 11, verse 11. I have also spoken unto the prophets, and I have multiplied visions, and by the ministry of the prophets have I used similitudes. If Gilead be given to iniquity, becoming altogether vanity, in Gilgal they sacrifice unto bullocks, yea, their altars shall be as heaps in the furrows of the field.
All right, there. All right. That's one part of where the most Sephardic were in their service on the Haftarah. But I just want to break down about saying if they be given to iniquity and become altogether vanity, in Gilgal they sacrificing the bullocks. Can you imagine the irony that you had 2 calves at both ends, one in Bethel and one in Samaria of the northern kingdom boundaries? That was first set up by Jeroboam the first. Now this prophecy Hosea is talking in reference to Jeroboam the second, and in the line of Yehu. Now, what it shows that if you worshiping a calf, why sacrifice a calf? You're worshiping a bull, why sacrifice a bull? Just that mentality of the very thing I hold pride as something greater than me, I'm gonna slaughter that. Even the Hindus in India don't eat, and look at the cows being sacred because they consider one of the deities. So they don't want you slaughtering no cows in India. And but here it is, we as Israelites worshiping a calf, worshiping a bull, 2 bulls, one in Israel, one in the other in Israel, the northern kingdom primarily, and the sacrifice is going to be bullocks, which is a strange irony. Let's read a little bit further. We're going a little bit further.
Verse 11.
13.
13. Sukkah. And Jacob fled into the field of Aram, and Israel served for a wife, and for a wife he kept sheep. And by a prophet, Yahuwah brought Israel up out of Egypt, and by a prophet was he kept. And Ephraim.
Before we go there, all right. He served for a wife, all right, and he kept sheep. Now we know that, we talk about Jacob serving for a wife, but we got one other figure. Now, some people must think about Moshe, in reference to that he was a shepherd and he worked for his father-in-law, you know what I mean? But he didn't work for a wife. He just was contented to work for his father-in-law, stay with his father-in-law because he was on the run as well. But and his father-in-law just gave him, support his wife because of the kindness and the love he had for Moshe, and what kind of kindness Moshe did. But a man that actually kept sheep, or watch over some sheep, and wound up getting a wife similar to this, the closest area is that of Dawi Hamelech, when he watched over Nabal's flock. And he asked Nabal, look here, we looked over your flock and nothing happened. Everything was cool. You still got all your flocks. We need, could you spare, give us something, to feed me and the young man, the people that's with me, because while you was there, we made sure nobody, took advantage of you. You didn't lose none. We watched it like a shepherd. And he refused to give it to him, and what's interesting is that this individual that David asked this favor from, named Nabal, his name has the exact same letters as Laban. So you take Laban and Lamed, Beit, Nun, and you got Nabal, Nun, Beit, Lamed. Just a reversal, pretty much, of the spelling of the name Laban and Nabal. So Dawi himself wind up getting a wife, and he got the former wife of Nabal, which was named Abigail, who was a beautiful woman and a woman of good understanding, that he got in the matter of watching sheep. So that's just, a closer reversal of what, of guys doing the similar thing to Yaakov. And it goes on to say,
verse 15.
Yes.
Ephraim had provoked.
And by a prophet he was kept.
Verse 14.
Israel, before we get to it. All right. By a prophet, Moshe himself, God sent Moses down there. And also Moses pleaded for us a lot of times when we was messing up, pleading on our behalf. So that's why we was kept, because God one time was going to destroy all of us and make a nation out of Moses. But Moses pleaded on our behalf. Now, the 15th verse, it goes on to say, and Ephraim.
Verse 15, and Ephraim hath provoked most bitterly. Therefore shall his blood be cast upon him, and his reproach shall his Lord return unto him. Chapter 13.
Now yes.
Chapter 13, verse 1. When Ephraim spoke, there was trembling. He exalted himself in Israel, but when he became guilty through Baal, he died. And now they...
Right there. Before we go there, I just want to bring a correlation. When the first guy, Jeroboam the first, when he talked against King Solomon, he said what he said, and he stood up. He was scared, and he fled down into Egypt. But he was afraid what he said. When he said what he said, but he spoke for righteousness and spoke for the truth. So God allowed him to be king of the northern kingdom. Now this Jeroboam here, and basically on the side of Ephraim, he's talking and making everybody else afraid of him. So it's just a role reversal going on now, where the first Jeroboam, he was afraid, though he had to speak the truth. This guy speaking lies and speaking bold, and everybody else is afraid. So this just shows a little, you know, that's why I said he became guilty through Baal. He died. Second verse.
Verse 2 reads, and now, give me 1 second here, Nasik.
Okay.
Second verse reads, and now they sin more and more, and have made them molten images of their silver, according to their own understanding, even idols of all of them, the work of the craftsmen. Of them they say, they that sacrifice men kiss calves. Therefore they shall be as the morning cloud, and as the dew that early passeth away, as the shaft that is driven with the wind out of the threshing floor, and as the smoke out of the window. Yet I am Yehudah thy God from the land of Egypt, and thou knowest no God but me, and beside me there is no Savior.
That's important to understand that. Hold it before that. All right. That say, you didn't know no other God but me when you left out of you know, as say jail, you know, after the oppression of Egypt, the house of bondage. The only God you knew was me. That's the only God you was coming to deal with was me. And also, what I did for you in the wilderness, it wasn't about the other gods in there. It's in the land of great drought. All right, let's go into the 6th verse.
Verse 6, when they were fed, they became full, they were filled, and their heart was exalted. Therefore have they forgotten me. Therefore am I become unto them as a lion, and as a leopard will I watch by the way.
All right, well, we're going to stop at the 6th and we'll skip on down. All right, 6th verse actually ends the Sephardic guys' way if they even went further. All right, the rest of this continue with the Ashkenazi, but I don't want to deal with the Ashkenazi completely. I just want to bring out a couple of good points in there and in the Sidra of the Haftarah that's related to what's the Ashkenazi do. So we're going to pick it up from, let's skip on down. All right, let's go for the 14th chapter and the 2nd verse.
You said the 14th chapter, 2nd verse?
Yeah. Yes, 2nd verse.
Chapter 14, verse 2.
Yes.
Give me 1 second here. All right. Chapter 14, verse 2 reads, return, O Yisrael, unto Yehudah thy God, for thou hast stumbled in thine iniquity. Take with you words, and return unto Yehudah, say unto him, forgive all iniquity, and accept that which is good. So will we render for bullocks the offering of our lips.
All right, right there. Now, this salvation right here that is talk about is that it mentions about return to the Creator. And I omitted the 13th and 13th chapter and 14th verse, but you know, it used the term in it says in the chapter before that, 14th verse, I shall ransom them from the power of the netherworlds. I shall redeem them from death. Ho, thy plagues, O death. Ho, thy destruction, O netherworld. Repentance be hid from my eyes. All right. So now it used the term, a similar word, you know, to reka, which is also a similar word for matters of words. All right. So here we're told in the 14th chapter, you know, the return, but take words, was Devarim. Now, Devarim has an interesting thing. Whenever we talk about the book of Devarim, it means words, matters, but it also is the same root for bees. So sometimes your words and what you say could be detrimental to you, and sometimes it could the bees goes to deliver a sweet nectar, which is honey. So the Creator saying, bring with your words, but it's not just words alone. See, a lot of us say we just come back with words, but we got to come back with actions too. See, so we used to have a saying when I grew up, is that talk is so cheap, people do it in their sleep. Action is deep. So that we ourselves, when we come back and bring about words, we got to also make a change. So that's what teshuvah, and that's what repentance is. The latter part actually of this Hosea is mostly read during the time of between Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur. That's Shabbat there, the Shabbat of repentance. And so the latter part of this book of Hosea is written, spoken on during that particular period of time, because that's what we bring in. We bring in not only our words of being sorrowful and remorseful, but also that we're trying to show through our actions that we're making a change. And the Creator is not just saying, you just tell me that's it and it's all over. And it said, and it goes on to say that fourth verse, Asher.
Verse 4, it reads, Ashur shall not save us. We will not ride upon horses, neither will we call any more the work of our hands our gods. For indeed the fatherless findeth mercy. I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely, for mine anger is turned away from him. I will be as the dew unto Israel. He shall blossom as the lily and cast forth his roots as Lebanon. His branches shall...
Right there first, before we go further. All right, they use a term there called tisa, awon. All right, that's referring to, all the iniquities. You know what I mean? All our iniquities, and that's used there. But we have a sidra called kitasa, and it's interesting, that word, because it's used differently in the sidra. When God, said, causes take an account of, that's in the book of Exodus, and that's also during the time when we built the golden calf. So the Creator takes something that was used in a negative light and could turn it around in a positive light, so to speak, and make a correction for you, for your good. So when during the time of here, it's used to take account of our sins. And Kitasa, we know we built the golden calf, and we know God was going to destroy us, and then Moses had to plead with us and everything like that. And God was even going to destroy Aharon at that time. But here, it used that same term, and in a sense about, getting rid of atoning about our sins, forgiving us for that. All right, so we're going to just go maybe one more verse beyond that. Go ahead.
Verse 7. His branches shall spread, his beauty shall be as the olive tree, and his fragrance as Lebanon. They that dwell under his shadow shall again make corn to grow, and shall blossom as the vine. The scent thereof shall be as the wine of Lebanon. Ephraim shall say, what have I to do any more with idols? As for me, I respond and look on him. I am like a leafy cypress tree. From me is thy fruit found. Whoso is wise, let him understand these things. Whoso is prudent, let him know them. For the ways of Yahweh are right, and the just do walk in them. For transgressors do stumble therein. Hallelujah.
All right. Hallelujah. That finishes the book of Hosea, but they stopped before that in the Haftarah for the Ashkenazi. But what's important that I like to bring out is that in Hosea, that when those that might go back to Hosea 2:21, when the Creator betrothed us, when He brings it back to us, it's in righteousness and in judgment and in love, and that's those that wear what they call a tefillin in the morning. That's what they normally say when they start to put on the tefillin every morning. Those that follow a certain type of tradition. But the thing about Hosea is that it brings out not only one part, it's a part that brings out about where we're messing up at, and also how it relates to our ancestor Yaakov in the deceit. The word they use for deceit a lot, is marma, and that's actually mirma, memoration, mem and hey. So that is actually used, the first time it's used with Isaac, when Isaac describes what Jacob did to him. Then later on, Jacob used a formative word when he talks about what Laban had did to him. And later on, we read how we not only deceive ourselves, but we deceive each other and use deception and worship, by bringing stuff that's not proper before the Creator and changing things and kissing the calf and stuff of that nature. So the correlation is a little bit short in reference to that patriarchs, but it's showing that Hosea brings about from in the Haftarah, from the patriarchal times to monarchy. It shows the difference between patriarchal times and king, and how we rejected the Creator as being king, and we chose an earthly king, and therefore, the Creator let us know that He was the one that was taking care of us all the time. Also, it's brought out that when we rejected Him, that we're the only one we knew. Israel had 3 kings where we stayed somewhat all right. Saul, as bad as it was, we stayed somewhat okay. David, we stayed somewhat okay. And then King Solomon, we stayed and reached our zenith somewhat okay. After that, you had the splits, you had the ups and the downs and everything else going around with the nation of Israel. So I hope you got some of what I said. Any mistakes have been my own. I know it's a little choppy with the Haftarah going back and forth, but one of the things we can learn from is that as great as our forefather Jacob was, he had the answer for all the things he did. And you say, well, how do you have a wife that you have so many children by, and you hate her? And then you got to look back and say, oh, she remind me of what I did. I followed my mother's advice to deceive my father. She followed her father's advice to deceive me. So I played to be somebody else. She played to be somebody else. I did this for my advantage to get a blessing. She did that for her advantage to get a blessing. Measure for measure. Sometimes we don't like to look at ourselves for what we are. And sometimes that transfer down to our children. But that I say Shalom Aleichem, any mistakes been my own.
Hallelujah. So, I got a question. You said earlier that when Yaakov went into the tent, you said, and I'm paraphrasing, some to the extent that we should not only be thinking of one thing, and that what Yaakov did, that he single-mindedly was only thinking about Raquel in the tent. And
maybe I made myself. Yeah. Before you go further. All right. What I said that when a man and a woman goes in a room,
right,
your focus should be on each other,
right,
and not somebody else.
Right.
It's obviously Leah focused on Yaakov. That's obvious because she knew who she had.
Right.
All right. But Yaakov focus was on somebody else that he didn't have. And so therefore, what kind of intimate relationship can you really have when your mind is elsewhere? So we should learn that when we have our significant other, it should be no other than our significant other.
Got you. But because I was going to say, he only could have thought of Leah because that's what he thought he was getting. That's what he thought he was getting.
Yeah, but it's obvious. But he said he realized,
right,
it was Leah in the morning.
In the morning, right. I mean, after the lights, after the sunlight coming through the tent, and you turn around and you look, and after the wine done wore off, you realize that it's not the one you bargained for.
And also that's how that gives the rise why they said they was identical twins as opposed to Yaakov and Esau being not twins. That's one of the comments in reference to that. Because if you deal with twin identical twins, it takes a while to really see and look at them if they're identical.
Absolutely.
It's the difference.
Especially if you don't know them and you don't live with them daily. If
Exactly.
they're identical,
Yeah,
yeah. Because my Isha has a set of identical twin nephews, and I still don't know the difference. I just call out a name, and whichever one answers, then
hopefully
I know that's the one.
Hopefully it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no. I just say the JJ guys.
yeah. The also a question for you. I know this is a question of this is controversy, but I know you have an opinion on it that's not the most popular amongst people that look at our forefathers as just being like these superheroes and don't look at them in their faults and in the things that they might have done that was wrong. And I'm more one that thinks like Q in terms of our fathers made mistakes and the things that are left for as an example for us to learn from, right? So with all that being said, do you feel like Yaakov is going through these heartaches or went through this heartaches with Laban and he's being somewhat punished? Some people call it quote unquote karma, but we know everything comes from the Most High God. Do you think he's being punished for deceiving his father?
Oh, yes. That's why I said measure for measure earlier, because every exact thing that, he did, even the way he treated Esau, in reference to the first encounter of the food. And as a matter of fact, when you read the Haftarah in reference to Hosea, you're going to find that they use the word deceive in the womb, so in the Hebrew. So they use the word that, the same word. They use it that, in reference to Jacob was trying to deceive. I didn't bring that up because most people don't have the Hebrew in front of them. And when you go back into the Haftarah, dealing with in the 14th, let me see, but I think I marked it down somewhere. Let me see here. Myanmar. Well, I didn't mark it down. Okay. Well, thanks. Well, it's in the Haftarah itself. They use the way the word Myanmar is used there. I didn't write it down in this particular thing. I just figured I'd be kind of brief in it. But it's used in reference to in the womb, that when they struggle, that he was trying to use deception while in the womb. And it's written in the book of Hosea. That's that. So that's some things that's mentioned there that you won't see directly in Genesis. So you just read about the struggle in Genesis.
So the deeper question will be this, and this is going to be taboo for some people because they're going to say, Chief Uzal, you went overboard. You're going too deep into the rabbit's hole. But I'm going to ask you because I know that I can have these type of conversations with you. So should we take a deeper look at our mother, Rebecca, because it seems like Laban is a deceiver, supplanter, trickster, right? That's what we gather from him. He pulled a fast one on Jacob, right?
Right.
But is that a family trait? Because is that what Rebecca put into Yaakov? What is your opinion on that?
Okay, I'll try to avoid that because I didn't want to explain too much in the center part. You know what I mean?
No, but this is a discussion. This is a discussion on question.
Okay,
right.
I'm gonna speak on that, but I try to gloss over a lot of stuff in the Sidra and just go to the Haftarah. But one of the things is that when Yaakov met Laban, it said, how do Jacob steal Laban's heart? How did he steal his heart? He stole his heart. I mean, it's tell you straight up in the book that Jacob stole Laban's heart, because he emulated that character of deception and gain. That if I'm gonna have a son that can follow my footsteps, this will be the guy. This to be one I could use, because he told him all that happened to him when he met him with no money, but concerning Esau and concerning why his mother had used that ruse to get him over there. So therefore,
a man after my own heart.
I mean, I can see the family resemblance, not just in the features, but in the action. So that's what hurt Laban, because he had a real protege under the works, and so just like he used the words that could be that could be literally, not literally taken. If he paused in between saying, "I am your son, Esau, your firstborn," is it not better that I give it to you than anybody else? So just like Isaac wanted to believe that I'm doing the right thing, so was Jacob believe, hey, I got a good deal. So the words that he used to trick his father,
right?
He was deceived with words. So he learned that much, that even his children picked up certain things in deception. So it didn't just stop with him. It went even with his children, and so much so that even Judah, great as he was deceived, as he tried to deceive along with the rest of the brothers. So and that's the good part about looking at our ancestors and the patriarchs, that you see their strong points and their weak points, and you're supposed to learn to be strong against following the weak points, because that way you can become a better individual. The thing is about our repentance, and that is focused on in Hosea and bringing back words, is that it's not that I haven't done those things, but I'm strong enough now to say I could turn away from them things, and I acknowledge that I did something that was wrong. And Jacob himself, it took a while for him to acknowledge that he actually did wrong. It took him a great while to acknowledge that. And if you read, as we go in the next couple of weeks in the Sidra and dealing with Jacob, it's going to take a while to figure out, is this part of my karma? And I'm perpetuating certain things. And that's why we could emulate certain individuals, but that's why I was told to emulate Abraham and Mother Sarah, not Isaac, not Jacob, but Abraham and Mother Sarah, who had less faults. And also with Isaac, he was above reproach, but he been that's a super high standard for him. So that's why his standard was very high out the patriarchs as far as moral, sanctity and holiness. Whereas that's why he tried to do all the positive stuff his father did. And you only read where one negative stuff he actually did.
So then my next question will be this. Why do you think that did our mother Rivka ever tell Isaac that she had this dream and that the elders should serve the youngest, and there'll be two different nations in your womb, and why don't you think that she said anything to her husband, and then it could have avoided these turn of events that happen later? Because obviously it seems like it's a domino effect. One thing led to another, to another, to another. Did she ever reveal that to her husband?
Well, one, the prophecy, she went to inquire. She didn't have a dream in reference to that.
Right.
All right. So it was you know, she went to inquire, you know what I mean, because she wanted children, and God answered her husband's prayer, so she got pregnant with 2. Right. And she don't know anybody else that had problems with birth once they was, you know, impregnated like that, you know, with the struggle. And she recognizes the struggle, so she went to inquire thus. And it said the elder should serve the younger, you know what I mean, one people shall be stronger than the other. Now, what as obviously we know for sure, she didn't tell him at all in the beginning. We know that automatically. But what we do learn, that's clear cut, that the blessing that Yaakov have gotten from his father, see, Rivka didn't know which blessing he gonna get. And that's what we, you know, that's one of the operative thing. She didn't know what blessing that Isaac was going to give out. She had no knowledge of that, just like Isaac had no, I assume, had no knowledge of which one is which, you know, about what was told, you know, revealed to Rivka. But the blessing that he had for Yaakov was the bringing the line down of Abraham to Yaakov. That's what he had, even though Isaac know he was tricked. No, he was deceived. And it's mentioned that he mentions it that he was deceived. So it's not a thing where I heard so many Israelites say, well, you know, it must have been meant because God's in the plan. But we read where God would take certain things that's negative and turn it around for your good. But the Creator is never in a plan of doing wickedness. And that's something that we gotta constantly keep in mind, that the Creator might turn our frailties into good. I'll do, and the same thing about I'll do is talking about in the prophecy concerning Ephraim, that certain things will be like a dew and it just wipe away. Well, the Creator talk about, use the same term do as part of a refreshment and invigorate. So that's so the Creator would take certain things and turn it around. Dreams got Joseph in trouble. Dreams got him out of trouble. So that's, you know, so and that's what you call, you know, measure for measure. The Creator might work on certain things and turn it around for good. Hallelujah. But you're gonna pay the cost in between.
Right. Hallelujah. I taught our Rabbi Nasik for the words and for bringing us understanding on this portion. May the Most High God bless you. Shalom, shalom.
All of us. All right. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to the D.C.B channel. My name is Uziah Lewy. I'm one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH, CHOKMAH, located in the Red Hood section of Brooklyn, New York. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth once again for life, food, clothing, and shelter. All right, as we're approaching another one of our seasons, not a season commanded by the Creator, is not found in the book of Leviticus chapter 23, where he appointed us holy seasons and he appointed us holy days, to where we come before him and we have offerings and sacrifices and we appear before him as he commanded us in the Torah. But this, I guess this day could be called a holiday, more so than a holy day, because it wasn't assigned by the Creator. This day is this season is called the Hanukkah season, which is a rededication of the temple because of what happened during the Seleucid era, where the temple was destroyed and was brought to the altar, more so, was destroyed. The temple was brought to was sacked, and all the riches and things were taken out of the temple for the king at that time was Antiochus Epiphanes. And these people coming, they were ruling on the side of where Persia, more so Babylon, that area, after, this was years after Alexander the Great had passed away. We're going to get a little bit into that history. So I'm just going to go over it in different sections and different parts, because to try to complete it all in one day, it's going to be impossible for me. So I hope that I could get a lot more information out and doing about a 3 or 4 part series of this Hanukkah history and all of the things that our forefathers went through during this time. Now, I do want to make something clear. Hanukkah is not a Hebrew version of Xmas. For so often, our people have indulged in gift giving and almost getting into the Xmas season, because so often, or a lot of times, Hanukkah will fall around the time of the Xmas season, which is a pagan holiday that we do not observe. But what began to happen is that when the European Jews began to migrate to the U.S. after World War II, and some even before World War II, when they came into the different cities of the United States, they began to put their children in regular public schools. And when the children went to school and Xmas time came around, they began to see that all these other children, these Christian children, were receiving gifts, and they were real happy during this time, and it was a season to be happy and uplifted. And their children will come home and question, why is it that these children are getting gifts and they're not getting any? So they commercialized the celebration of Hanukkah and made it into gift giving, and some people even call it the Jewish Xmas. So first off, we're not Jewish, and this holiday of this remembrance of this history should not be polluted with idolatry and, just the things that will take away from what the significance of the time and the season is really about. I know some people out there, they get offended when I say these things, but it's the truth. If you would just listen to me and you just do the history and research it, you will see that this season is not a season for gift giving. It's not a season for us to do any of that, but it's a rededication. It's a remembrance of the great victories that the Most High God gave these brave people and these brave men. So I'm going to begin by going into the book of 1 Maccabees chapter 1. And it reads, "And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth." So now we have to examine the time and period that this is. We talking about Philip of Macedon, the father of Alexander, who we know as Alexander the Great in history. Go over here. So you see here the book of the Maccabees. Alexander was born at about 20 or 21 of July, 356 before the Common Era, and he died around 10 or 11 of June, 323 before the Common Era. His name Alexander means defender of men, also known as Alexander the Great or Alexander the Third. In 15 years of conquest, it is alleged that Alexander never lost a battle. And so that's the son. That's Alexander the Great. Now we go to Philip II of Macedon. He lived from 382 through 336 BC. Was the king of Basileus of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon from 359 BC until his assassination in 336 BC. He was a member of the Archead dynasty Argead dynasty of Macedonian kings, the third son of King Amyntas III of Macedon, and father of Alexander the Great and Philip III. The rise of Macedon during the reign of Philip II was achieved in part by his reformation of the ancient Macedonian army, establishing the Macedonian phalanx that proves critical in securing victories on the battlefield. So what all this is saying is that Philip, the father of Alexander, he came up with some war tactics in order to overcome certain enemies, right? One being the phalanx formation, which is the soldiers would line up in the shape of a phalanx. You know what a phalanx is. And they achieved great victories in these formations, and they also built certain types of weapons in order to hold off the enemies while they got in these formations. So during his time, he was known as being an innovator, a great general. Also, his son, Alexander, became a great general. And till this day, many of the battlefield generals, because remember, he wasn't only a king, he was a general, and he was a warring general and king. He got into the midst of the battle. He didn't run away or shy away from battle. So a lot of people admire that from him. After defeating Athens and Thebes at the Battle of Chaironia in 338 BC, Philip II led the effort to establish a federation of Greek states known as the League of Corinth, with him as the elected hegemon and commander-in-chief of a planned invasion of the Achaemenid Empire of Persia. However, his assassination led to the immediate succession of his son Alexander, who will go on to invade the Achaemenid Empire in his father's stead. Excuse me for some of these pronunciations because I'm not even know if I'm saying it right, but you get the gist. So one of the brilliant tactics of Philip of Macedon is that during that time, Greece was separated into different states, and each state had its own king. Philip of Macedon was integral because he was the one that caused all these different states to come together and become the one, or the beginning of what we know today as the one Greece. Prior to that, you know, they had states like Athens, Thebes, Sparta. These are all these places. It was about 5 or 6 different places or different states that they dwelled in that had their own kings, their own leaders, their own rulers, and they were always at wars with each other. They always warred with each other. All right, so the sarissa or the sarissa was a long spear or pike about 4 to 6 meters, 13 to 12 feet in length. It was introduced by Philip II of Macedon and was used in his Macedonian phalanxes as a replacement for the early dory, which was considerably shorter. So this is part of what made his strategy great, that he built these 13 to 20 foot long spear pikes, almost like what you see the what do you call those English got the knights. You know, these guys be on the horses and they got those long pikes or poles or whatever, and they run into each other. So this is sort of like giving you an idea of what the Greeks were using in order to ward off their enemies or whoever was trying to attack them. So at this point, He was known as a great innovator in war. Also, his son Alexander, as we see in history, he will also become one of the greatest commanders and leaders of our army. So we get a little history of how this whole thing begins. Let me go back to, let me see. So right here, let's go back to the book of Maccabees. And it says, and made many wars and won many strong, verse 2. First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 2. And made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. It's talking about Alexander. So Alexander will show up to you and he will offer you peace. And he will look for your surrender. But if you put up an opposition, he would take you out. Right? So Alexander, it's like I was explaining about the, I believe it was the Babylonians was trying to get out to Tyre, to the island, which was about a mile away from actual mainland Tyre. And they didn't, 13 years, I believe, they didn't accomplish it to get out there and really put a dent into the island. But Alexander, what they couldn't do in 13 years, Alexander did it. And he built the bridge all the way out to that island, and he went into that stronghold of Tyre and destroyed it. So the Most High God definitely gave him the power and the strength to overcome strongholds in cities and people. And he's also spoken about, you know, in history. And we see it also in this history that he's spoken about because he was a real character and a real figure. It says here, verse 2, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. So like I say, he presented you for peace. With peace, Alexander, if you said peace, then you became tributary to him. You had to pay him a certain amount of taxes. And he will let you worship and keep your religion. Live the way that you wanted to live. Do the things that you wanted to do. He would definitely do that, right? He will allow you to worship your God as long as you were doing and paying the actual taxes that were imposed upon you. It says, and he went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. Another fun factor about Alexander is that he, as history says it, that his mother made him think that he was the son of a god. It was very important for him to sit on the throne of Egypt and call himself a pharaoh. These are all things that Alexander did, you know, as a general and also as a ruler and a king. So he sat on the throne of Egypt and he put on the Egyptian crown and called himself Pharaoh. So these are some of the things that we hear and know about Alexander. Verse 4, and he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. So you see, you become a tributary, that means you have to pay taxes. After these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. So if you know about Alexander, he went all the way out to, he conquered from Greece all the way down south to Egypt, went out east, all the way east, all the way till he couldn't go anymore. He went to he went to India, and in India he could not cross that Indian river. Soldiers got tired and they came back. And, you know, they just wanted to go home. They were tired of conquering. As the story says, that his soldiers got tired and they just didn't want to continue to go, because after India is China, I believe. crossed the Indian Sea. I think it's China after that. So they were just tired. They just wanted to come back home. They missed their families in Greece, and but Alexander was addicted to power and to overcoming people and ruling over people. Like, he became addicted with that, conquering people, I think is a better word. So after these things, he fell sick. Alexander fell sick. So what we see here is, let us go back. Well, not quite yet. Let's stay with the chapter. Verse 6. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place. So he only ruled 12 years. He died relatively a young man. He died in his 30s. But in the 12 years of his reign, that's what he did. He went and he conquered lands. He went and he conquered lands, and he had a 12-year run, but we still remember him today in history, and historians still remember him for what he had done. So it just shows you the mark that he left on this earth. It says here, so Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place. So, when the king is gone, everybody wants to be ruler. So his servants all put on crowns. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them. Many years and evils were multiplied in the earth. So there's a little bit more than that. So let's go back. So this is a map of, after Alexander died, the division of his kingdom. So power divisions 301 BCE. Cassander in Macedonia and Greece. In green. So this is mainland Greece right here. So that's what Cassander, one of the generals, got. Lysimachus, eastward in Thrace and Asia Minor. So that's in green. So that has to be this right here. Asia Minor. Right? Next. No, brown. Sorry about that. Green is Macedonia. Brown is Lysimachus, eastward. So this is Lysimachus territory. Eastward in Thrace and Asia Minor. That's brown. And Ptolemy in Egypt, Cyprus, and nearby Asia Minor, blue. So this Ptolemy in Egypt. It's parts of Asia Minor. And nearby Cyprus up here. This is all the Ptolemaic rule. And Seleucus to the Indus River, yellow. So this is it. It's a pretty vast space, right? Out into the Indus River. See it down here. So, as you can see, and that's where it cuts off his reign, because that's where his soldiers got tired and they wanted to come back home. So, I have up here Ephistian, Alexander's boyhood friend and alleged lover. So he grew up with this guy as a friend, and some people allege that he was Alexander's lover. It's no secret that Greeks practice homosexuality openly. In fact, most of the soldiers had little boys as their lovers. So this is a part of their history that cannot be denied, that they practice homosexuality. Most Greek men were bisexuals, and it was accepted in their pedophilia, I guess, was accepted in their tradition, being with little boys, right? So let's read a little bit more. Said the satrapies handed out by Perdiccas, one of Alexander's lead generals, at the partition of Babylon became power bases each general used to bid for power. After the assassination of Perdiccas in 321 BC by his own soldiers during an invasion of Egypt, Macedonian unity collapsed, and 40 years of war between the successors, the Diadochi, right? Diadochi means successors. Those were the successors of Alexander. So the general that was left after Alexander, he was assassinated because the power struggle began. People wanted their power, and this is what happened. Ensued before the Hellenistic world settled into 4 stable power blocks: the Ptolemaic in Egypt, the Seleucid in Mesopotamia, Central in Asia, Attalid in Anatolia, the Antigonid in Macedon. In the process, both Alexander IV and Philip III were murdered. So now, Alexander's conquest: Battle of Persian Gate, the battle at Gargamella, Siege of Gaza, Battle of Granicus, Battle of Hydaspes, Battle of Issus, Siege in Helicarnassus, Siege of Miletus, Siege of the Sogdian Rock, and Siege of Tyre, 332 BC. It reads here, Alexander never lost or was defeated in battle, but has suffered heavy casualties and losses, most notably the fighting in India, where he was nearly killed. If Alexander continued to fight, he might even have lost. This is due to vicious Indians, unused to the climate, unused to basically everything, plants and all, which were foreign and some even dangerous. Troops did not really want to fight. Everyone but Alexander was sick of conquest and wanted home, Macedonia, not Persia. So another fact about Alexander, one of his teachers was Aristotle. This is one of his teachers growing up. This is who taught him. The great philosopher and thinker Aristotle was his teacher. So by any length of the imagination, Alexander was not a stupid man. He understood power. He understood the power that comes with power. And he understood also, as a leader, to allow people to be able to worship their God and to leave people alone. But he was also a killer. And in order to become an emperor, you can't, you're going to kill some people along the way. And that's exactly what Alexander did. So let us go back to the portion in the book of Maccabees. Verse 9. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them. Many years and evils were multiplied in the earth. And they came out of them a wicked root. Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage of Rome at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So Antiochus, I know I'm saying his name different all the times. So Antiochus, this was his rule right here. Everything you see over here in yellow. This is all what the Seleucid Empire stayed with, right? So this is Antiochus's whole thing right here. So now we're going to see what happens next. It says here, in those days, verse 11. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men who pursued many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So there was a priest by the name of Jason. Right at this time, we've been Hellenized, and our Hebrew names has been turned to Greek and Roman. So Jason is really Joshua. So this particular man, Jason, he went to the king and he offered him a certain amount of money to become priest in Israel. And he killed this people. He did a bunch of things that were unseemly before the Creator and man, and his people hated it. The Israelites hated him, although he was a Israelite, and wanted to kill him. But he fled, right? And he tried to buy the priesthood from King Antiochus, but Antiochus, I believe, gave it to him initially, but then gave it to someone else, right? And he fell out of, because the other person was offering more money than what Jason was offering. So it shows the level that we fell to as a people, that the priesthood could be bought and sold to the highest bidder. It shows that as Israelites, we had completely lost it, and we were looking at the actual priesthood as a money maker, to where you offer somebody money to become a priest. And we understand that in our culture, that a priest, you born a priest, you got to be from the line of Aaron, you know. So thinking about those things and knowing those things, we understand all of the wicked things that our people were doing during that time. We had sellout Israelites that killed their own people and sold out their own people and started to get into things that had nothing to do with Israel itself. And it reads, verse 11, in those days went there out Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have much sorrow. So these Israelites want to make allegiance with the heathens, with the Greek, or the Hellenistic government that's in place now, and they want to participate in all of the things that are happening and all of the things that are taboo for us to do as God's people. So now they wanted to participate. They wanted to be included, and they wanted to be inclusive into whatever it was that was happening during that time. Just like how we do today, just like we want to be a part of everything, and we don't want to be left out. We wanted to segregate, and no, we didn't want to segregate. We wanted to integrate and become one with these wicked people and the Hellenistic customs and the heathenistic customs that would only keep us further and further away from the Creator. So these are the things that we began to do. And it reads, I messed up here, give me a second. In those days were not they out of Israel wicked men, verse 11, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So let's make an agreement with the people around us. So this device pleased them well. You know that these people were far gone, these Israelites. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. So Antiochus gave them license. As long as you're doing that which is evil, you could do it. You got license to do whatever it is that's wicked and that's against Torah. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. They built a place of exercise. Whereon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathens, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. The place of exercise that they built let me see if I could get to that. Gymnasium. This is the outline of a gymnasium, how a gymnasium will look. And these were pictures of how men would wrestle in the gymnasium and do their exercises. And a gymnasium was where primarily men and boys met to discuss science, to discuss philosophy, and to also exercise. And the particular thing about the way that they exercise in these gymnasiums was in total nudity. They were naked, as you could see, as the pictures and the relics depict how they exercised in gymnasiums. So now, if we go back up, gymnasium, origin late 16th century via Latin from Greek, gymnasium from gymnasium, exercise naked, from gymnos, naked, right? So it breaks down. Gymnasium means to exercise naked. In ancient Greece, functioned as a training facility for competitors and public games. Competitors and public games. It was also a place for socializing and engaging in intellectual pursuits. Thus, they had conversations on philosophy, science, everything else. The name comes from the ancient Greek term gymnos, meaning naked. Athletes competed nude, a practice which was said to encourage aesthetic appreciation of the male body and to be a tribute to the gods. Gymnasia and palestra, wrestling schools, were under the protection and patronage of Heracles, Hermes, and in Athens, Theseus. Modim is about 18 to 20 miles northwest of Jerusalem. So we're going to get to that while we got Modim up here. We're going to go back to the scriptures. So they built a place of exercises, the gymnasium, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of two realms. So Antiochus, it wasn't enough that he had the largest landmass and the separation of the power of that King Alexander had amassed, and it was broken into 4 parts, and he had the biggest part, but now he wants to come and to the Ptolemies, which is they're down in Egypt, and take over their whole thing. Verse 17, wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. So Ptolemy was afraid of Antiochus, and he fled Egypt. He fled Egypt. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. He took the spoils out of the city of Egypt, the cities of Egypt. Verse 20, and after Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. So he came up against, right after he invaded Egypt, he came up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, meaning with a great army, and entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof. So he went in there and he ransacked the temple of the Most High God and took all the valuable things, all of the gold, everything. And he left. And the table of the showbread and the pouring vessels and the vials and the censers of gold and the veil and the crown and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. All of these things he took, he pulled them off. And this happened because of the transgressions of the children of Israel, why even a heathen could come in and do this. But nonetheless, it was done. He took all of the gold, all of the things of value, and he walked out of that temple. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. So the priests during that time, like I said, they were buying the priesthood. So everybody was crooked. They were crooked. They were corrupt. And the Most High God is putting them through the ringer. They had to be punished for what is it that they did to transgress the commandments of the Creator, as the Most High God promised us that our forefathers would have gone into captivity, or better, our ancestors now. And that's exactly what happened because of what they did or what they did not do, right, also. And the Most High God had to punish them for whatever it is that happened. Most High had to punish them. It says here, verse 24, and when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. So it said they killed about 80,000 people. They took some people into captivity, and they just massacred us. And we'll see later what started to happen and what kind of agreement these people had to make in order to not be slaughtered. Verse 25, therefore there was a great mourning in Israel in every place where they were. I told you, when you read in the book of 2 Maccabees, it tells you about 80,000 people perished, were murdered. Verse 26, so that the princes and the elders mourned, the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was charged. So it was a grieving thing to where everybody was in pain and was hurting. Verse 27, every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Yaakov was covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude. So after 2 years of that great massacre, Antiochus sends his chief collector with a great army. Meaning, even after we massacred you and did all that, you got to pay tribute now. And you got to do what we tell you to do. Verse 30. And spake peaceably and spoke peaceable words, right? This is the tax collector. He spoke peaceable when he came with the multitude, verse 30, and he spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city and smote it very sore and destroyed much people of Israel. He destroyed much people of Israel. He spoke peaceably, but he came with deceit. And besides the 80,000 that were killed initially, now this guy came to collect taxes, but on the way, he went to kill a lot of people also. Verse 31. When he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive and possessed the cattle. So they took our women and children captive, burned down the city, made a great massacre of the men, and it was just fun for them. Then built they the city of David. Then builded they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. So the heathen took the city of David and made it a stronghold for themselves. They built tall walls, make sure nobody comes in there. And if they do try to come in there, they will have time. They'll get up on those walls and be able to see them from a mile if they want to get in there. Verse 34, and they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. So they took a wicked nation and put them in there. They took all these heathens that don't believe in the Creator. They put them all in there to dwell in there and to desecrate whatever was left or whatever was looked at as being holy. It was just desecrated. Let me go back over here. And it reads, verse 35, they stored it also with armor and victuals, and when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare. Verse 36, for it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, defiled it, and so much that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. So the people of Jerusalem was witnessing these massacres of their people, and they just got up and left everything. They said, before I'll be next or my children be next. So that's why a lot of the people, they broke out of Jerusalem. You know, you grow up somewhere and you have an affinity for that place and you have a love for that place, and when you got to uproot yourself and leave, it has to be a drastic situation, and this definitely was a drastic situation. It reads, her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning. Her shop told into reproach, her honor into contempt. So the city was turned into mourning because of all the deaths. Her shop told into reproach. They weren't even keeping the Sabbath anymore. Just think about it. They weren't even keeping the Sabbath for most part in there. And the one or two hardliners and the people that were still doing it, no, they lived in the outskirts. The ones that lived within the city probably were murdered because they didn't want that type of living there. Verse 40. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. The excellency of Israel and Judah was turned into mourning because of all the destruction and the deaths that were happening. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. So now he's not going to follow in the steps of Alexander and allow people to have their own religion. Now he wants it to be a new world order under one religious observance. And this is where things will begin to shift a little. Let's see. Verse 42. It reads, and everyone should leave his laws, so all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Of course, they're going to agree because they are in accordance with heathenistic ways. But they want everyone to have the same religion. One law, one religion, and that's what we follow. And it's not the quote unquote our way of life, it is the Greek way of life. Verse 43, yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Shabbat. Those are the weak-minded people. They just gave in and they said, you know what? It is what it is. I'm going to worship. I'm going to profane the Sabbath. God knows what's in my heart. And for some instances, some of them didn't even say that. It was just what it was at that point. That we were so far away from doing Torah, we did anything. Verse 44. For the king has sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the Lord of the land. So king has commanded them that they need to follow these laws and walk in them. Verse 45. And forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Shabbatos and festival days. A very specific letter to not to observe the Sabbath, not to come to the holy temple with offerings, or for the Sabbath or holy festivals. This is crazy. It reads here, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. Set up altars and groves and chapels of idols and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they shall also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. So this is a tall bargain right here. So they want people to set up altars and groves and chapels of idols and sacrifice swine's flesh, which is against the laws of God, right? We can't sacrifice swine's flesh upon his altar. And then an unclean beast. It's crazy. That they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. So they wanted us to leave our children uncircumcised. And some people that were already circumcised that wanted to become Hellenistic and be part of that whole society, they would do things in order to, whatever bit of skin you got rolled up at the top of your private area, the tip, they would take that skin, roll it down, and weigh it down so that it could stretch the skin back out so that they could appear like the Greeks being uncircumcised. People went into drastic measures just to become Greek. Just like today, people go through drastic measures just for popularity, just to look a certain way on camera. So back then, our people were just crazy. Some of our people. Verse 49. To the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. So the whole thing was to just forget the Creator, forget your Lord, the way that you were raised up, and just come over here and just do everything that's wrong. It reads here, and whosoever will not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he shall die. So direct order, you don't follow it, you're going to die. Verse 51. In the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. So it seemed like this decree was mainly for Jerusalem and for Judah and for Israel. If you don't adhere to these laws, if you don't stay uncircumcised, if you don't do certain things, that's off with your head. Show you how evil this Antiochus is. Verse 52, then many of the people were gathered unto them to will everyone that forsook the Lord, and so they committed evils in the land. Verse 53, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even whensoever that they could flee for succor. So our ancestors, they went into places of hiding in the rocks and the mountains and all the secret places to get away from this madman and his minions that he sent around. Verse 54. Now the 15th day of the month Keslu, in the 140 and 50 year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. So they really trying to Hellenize the people of Israel and Judah, and they really trying to stick it to us, right, to have to partake in these unholy events. Nonetheless, let's read on 55. And burn incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. So they were so hateful of the laws of God that whenever they found a scroll, they burnt it with fire because they wanted to erase the memory of the Creator from us. They wanted to take that away from us, but man proposed this thing and the Most High God disposes of them. Verse 57, and whosoever was found with any of the book of the testament, or of any committed to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. I don't know what anybody did to Antiochus, what Israelite did what to him, but he truly had a true hatred for us. He wanted to cut us off from our main source, from our line, the Torah. That's our line, our connection with the Creator, the Torah. So he wanted to cut us off completely from our main line, which is the Torah. Verse 58. Thus did they, by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God.
And people who like, yo, this person has a record of being righteous, but yet we still.
Verse 60. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged their infants about their necks and rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them. So the women that had circumcised these babies, they put them to death. So it was really tough time for Israel at that time. Sometimes we think we have a hard, but imagine you getting shut down completely and you got to move in some little cubby hole in your parents' house again, right? These people were so ruthless that they hung their infants off of their mother's necks while the infants were hanging by the mother's breasts, and they have to see the infant die because they circumcised them. A cruel people, a wicked seed Antiochus, who, by the way, his name means God manifests. He thought he was God. Verse 62, howbeit, many in Israel were fully resolved and confirming themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Many people had conviction, and they said that they will not eat anything unclean. They will rather die. And the next time I go into this, I'm going to go into another chapter, break away from here, and show you some of the bravery that some of our ancestors show. Verse 63, wherefore, the rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. And there was very great wrath upon Israel. It was very great wrath upon Israel. So I would just like to thank all you brothers and sisters. I'm going to end right there for now. And hopefully I could come back next week and actually continue in this history until we get to the 28th of this month, which will be the 25th of Kislev. And thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. I hope that you got something out of the lesson. I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth be with you all, that He will guide you and protect you and keep you all. Shalom, shalom. May the Most High God bless each and every one of you. Hallelujah.
אלוהים אחרים הפנה אם אתם רוצים שלום כבד אביך ואימך אם אתם רוצים שלום זכור את יום השבת לקדשו ישראל אם אתם רוצים שלום שלום Shalom, 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 shalom. Lo yeh לך אלוהים אחרים הפנה אם אתם רוצים שלום. כבד אביך ואימך אם אתם רוצים שלום זכור את יום השבת לקדשו ישראל אם אתם רוצים שלום 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 אם אתה רוצה שלום אם את רוצה שלום אל תשכח התורה אם אתה רוצה שלום אם את רוצה שלום אל תשכח התורה שלום 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 Shalom, 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 shalom. Lo yeh לך אלוהים אחרים הפנה אם אתם רוצים שלום. כבד אביך ואימך אם אתם רוצים שלום. זכור את יום השבת לקדשו ישראל אם אתם רוצים שלום 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 torah. Im ata רוצה שלום, אם אף רוצה שלום, אל תשכח התורה. אם אתה רוצה שלום, אם אף רוצה שלום,